Hey mamas, I wanted to talk a little bit today about finding your care team. There are so many challenges with finding the right people to help you through pregnancy, and I think especially as equestrians, it's really important that we look at kind of all of our options and really be discerning about who we're letting in this vulnerable time. So in this video today, we're going to be talking about not only, okay, all better. So in this video today, we're going to be talking about not only your medical care team, but also your barn care team and your personal life care team, because I know for me, and I know also for many equestrians, it's really hard to slow down. It's really hard to find rest and to ask for help. And this is just, if ever there was a time in your life that it was okay to ask for help and actually really encouraged to ask for help, it's pregnancy. So we're going to talk about that. It's also a little challenging in your first trimester because a lot of people still don't know. So we're also going to talk about that and hopefully help you navigate some of these questions that you have. So let's jump right in. And if you're not an equestrian, you're still welcome here. If you are an athlete or somebody with a physically demanding job, a farmer, a rancher, a farrier, I don't know, you work in construction or anything that kind of takes a toll on your body and you're also navigating pregnancy, you are absolutely welcome here. And even if you don't do any of those things and you're just wondering about navigating your care team, we're going to talk about that today. So let's get right in. So your medical care team may feel more straightforward, like the more straightforward place to start, but there's still a lot of question marks there. So I do just want to acknowledge that there are many ways that you can assemble a medical care team. Nowadays, there are all kinds of options ranging from like conventional hospital births all the way to the other end of the extreme end of the spectrum would be free birth, which is completely unassisted, and everything in between. So just to outline some of the options, you can have a standard medical birth with a OBGYN in a hospital, fully medicated, or even a surgical birth. You can have a unmedicated birth in a hospital setting with a midwife or OBGYN and or OBGYN. You can have an unmedicated home birth. Actually, before home birth, the next tier would be birth center, which is often run by midwives. Sometimes there is an OBGYN on call, and this is a kind of home-like setting, but it's not your home, and this is all they do is birth babies. So you go to this place instead of the hospital. Often they're located near hospitals, and often they have emergency supplies and kind of training to deal with more high-risk situations. However, you're not actually in a hospital. The next tier would be home birth, which would be completely unmedicated and often assisted by a midwife. And a midwife is somebody who's trained in the birthing process. And there are all kinds of, again, we'll get into this a little bit, but there are all kinds of levels of midwife and things like that. And then the least intervention option would be a free birth in which you are completely unassisted, no midwife. You may have a doula, and there are actually doulas trained specifically in free birth. So if you want somebody to kind of be there to guide you, but with no medical training, which to me is a little scary, but to each their own. I know some people are all about it. So just to lay out all of the options there, those are kind of some of the levels of intervention that you can have. So I think the first question is, what I've really come to believe very strongly is that you will have the most successful birth where you feel the most comfortable. So for somebody with a phobia of hospitals, you might not birth well in a hospital. But for somebody who is really afraid of kind of needing medical intervention and feels safe when they know that there's a doctor and a surgical staff on call ready to go if that becomes necessary, you will probably birth best in a hospital. And I think this kind of one-size-fits-all approach to labor and delivery and pregnancy care is largely ineffective for a lot of people, not everyone. And so I think the very first question for you is, where would you feel the most comfortable? Do you feel more comfortable at home? Do you feel more comfortable in a hospital setting, in a birth center, which is kind of the intersection of the two? And start from there. And then I would just say, like, interview as many people as you can. I would look for like many midwives, many OBGYNs, maybe not many, like 2 or 3 would probably be a good place to start. And you're not tied to any of them. You can change your care provider team in week 39 if you want to. It's not recommended. It's definitely better if you pick them early on in your pregnancy and stick with them, but you can be a little bit discerning. You don't just have to go with whoever, is on call the day that you go in for your first prenatal exam. So do a little bit of research, think through some of these questions. As an example, I always think about horses, right? Like, we know with horses, with mares or cows or goats or, any other mammal other than ourselves, that if you are sitting there looking at them, waiting for the baby, it always takes longer. Whereas if the animal feels very safe and comfortable and secure, and there's familiar people around and familiar animals around, they might self-isolate, but that as soon as they feel safe, that's when they have their baby. So why wouldn't it be the same for us, right? So really starting from that place of, where do I feel the most safe? And then working backwards from there. I also recommend that on your care team, you have an OBGYN, regardless of whether or not you intend to use them, like if you plan for a home birth, because it's always good to plan for the unexpected, right? So make sure you have an OBGYN, and whether or not you intend to go to the hospital, know which hospital you would go to if you needed to. For me, I actually outlined 2 hospital options. I had one hospital option that was a baby-friendly hospital that was the birth and delivery ward was run by midwives, but there were OBGYNs on staff. However, they didn't have a NICU at this hospital. So that was my first choice for birthing. But if there was any reason to believe there might be anything wrong with my baby, there was another hospital that I was going to go to that my OBGYN also worked at and could also come there, that had the NICU option. So, running through all those scenarios, tour multiple hospitals, make sure you know where you want to be, because you have power in this, right? And then the next person that is great to have is a doula, regardless of whether you use a midwife. A doula and a midwife are different things. So a midwife is actually medically trained in birth and labor and delivery, as well as prenatal care. So you can do all of your pre and postnatal care solely with a midwife if you so choose. Many midwives will recommend that you see an OBGYN at least once or twice during your pregnancy for various things, but you can opt to do all of your care with a midwife if you would like to. A doula, on the other hand, is somebody who is kind of your advocate in birth, and you can bring a doula with you to many hospitals. Again, check with your hospital to make sure that that's okay. But a doula is somebody who has been through many births as an advocate for other mamas, and is trained in pain management techniques, in relaxation techniques, and is kind of there to advocate for you specifically, and help you stay calm and comfortable and relaxed throughout your labor and delivery process. So I would definitely recommend looking at those 3 and deciding you can have all of them. But I would definitely recommend making sure you have at least 1 or 2 of those on your team. And then also on your birth and prenatal care team, if you have a partner or a friend or a parent or somebody who can be there with you to go to your prenatal appointments, to be with you in the labor and delivery portion of your your birth, and then to be with you immediately postpartum for those first few weeks to really make sure that you're healing and recovering well. Those are all really important things to have that kind of core support person or people at your side. I had my mom and my partner in the room with me, and I am so glad that they were both there because they were just so calm and really kept me relaxed. And we had practiced all of these like counter pressure techniques and all of these different acupressure and pain management techniques, and I did not want anyone to touch me. I just wanted someone to hold my hand, and it was really great to have both of them because they were able to take turns holding my hand and, going and feeding themselves and going to the bathroom and things like that. So definitely make sure that you have, in addition to your medical care, you're thinking through your personal support care. On the note of personal support care, let's talk about your kind of community support team, and specifically your barn support team. So this part is angled more at those equestrians out there. However, again, if you're a farmer or a ranger or you work in some kind of physical field, this is going to speak to you as well. Just insert the relevant words in exchange for barn and horses. So you may not have told, if you're in your first trimester, you may not have told too many people yet about your pregnancy, and that's okay. No rush or pressure. However, I would encourage you to tell a few key people in your barn life. So if you are a horse owner taking lessons with a trainer, I encourage you to tell your trainer as early as possible so that they can support you and help you come up with a safety plan, as well as make sure that, they're not over pushing you or under pushing you, and that you're just in communication with them throughout your pregnancy. Secondly, if you are the trainer, I would tell any of your kind of key staff if you have them. So your barn hands, if you have an assistant trainer, if you have a barn manager, make sure that they're in the know so that if you need to take extra sick days or whatever might be happening, they can kind of help keep your clients happy and keep your barn running smoothly in your absence, or maybe if you are present but not physically able to do as much, that they can kind of understand why until you make that announcement. So there's a few key people that I would let in on the secret if you're not announcing to the world yet, just to make sure that you are safe and cared for in your barn environment. And then, thinking through just making a plan for the rest of your pregnancy, really take a minute to think about if something happens, even if you are physically capable of continuing to ride and work and do all the things you need to do now, think through if something were to happen where like you needed to go on bed rest for an extended amount of time, or if you decided you really wanted to take a long extended maternity leave, which I know many equestrians don't want to do because we love our horses so much and we love our lives so much. But just bear with me for a minute and just think through if you wanted to take an extended time off, or you needed to take an extended time off, who would pick up the slack for you? And make sure that you're having conversations with them about all of the things that need to happen for your horses, for your clients if you have them, to keep the barn running smoothly, so that when you take time off, you know that everything is still operating well in your absence. I felt so good with the people that I chose to help care for my horses when I had my baby that I actually turned my phone off for I think like 2 or 3 weeks. And I just told them, call Ty if you need anything, but otherwise I am not going to be reachable by phone. And I felt really good about that decision. It allowed me to really get to heal and recover and bond with my baby, and I didn't feel the need to always be pulled back into the barn. So something to think through. Also, one of the best pieces of advice that I received that just really landed for me was from my friend who is a farmer, and she said, she's also a doula, she's a farmer and a doula and a mom, and she said, when your support has support, then you are going to ultimately reap all of the benefits of that. So as an example, I made sure that my assistant at the barn who was supporting me, who was going to be my core support, also had people to call on. So I made sure that we had extra backup for her. We had extra kind of teenagers to help around the barn. We had kind of extra volunteers, and that some of my family members knew what to do if they needed to be called on to help out. so that I wasn't just unloading my entire life and all of my responsibilities onto one person, because by her having some support, she was also then able to support me better because she wasn't as spread thin. So kind of thinking through that both in your barn life and your personal life, making sure that your support has support. And then same for my partner. So Ty, I also made sure that he had support. So we made sure that when people were bringing us meals, that they knew what kinds of foods he liked, and that we had people to take over some of his chores around the house, and that we had people to come walk the dogs because that's really important to him. And that way he was able to be more present and supportive and attentive to my needs because some of his needs were being taken care of. So thinking that through, it's not just necessarily about supporting you, but also about supporting your support so that you get the most out of that, if that makes sense. And a little confusing of a concept, but really important and key to your just mental relaxation and ability to really enjoy this time. So I hope all of that was helpful. It's kind of a broad strokes overview. If you want more information, there is a link below for my first trimester pregnancy checklist, which outlines more of this. And I highly recommend that. It walks you through a lot more. I also am in the works of creating even more resources to help pregnant equestrians, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those resources as they come available, and I will catch you in the next video.